Some of you may have seen my video titled, Why I Won't Buy a Nikon Z9. This video is titled, Why I Ordered a Nikon Z8. So let me explain. The main reason for me not wanting a Z9, besides the price, was the fact that it didn't have the availability of the 5:4 image ratio. Okay, the Nikon D810, which I own, and the Z7 both have that capability. So you could set it for the full frame, you could set it for DX, you could set it for 1:1, which gives you a square format, and you could also set it for that 5:4. Now the reason I like that 5:4, I'm a portrait photographer primarily, I do other things as well, events. But a lot of my clients want 8x10 prints. By having that 5:4 image size available in camera, when I shoot, I don't have to worry about leaving a lot of extra room above the head for cropping, because a standard 35mm frame, which is a 3:2 image ratio, which is the standard image ratio on many digital cameras, that doesn't scale directly up to 8x10. If you wanted to print the entire image without any cropping, it would go to 8x12. So if you're shooting for 8x10 prints as a finished product, you have to make sure you allow enough room, especially at the top, so you're not cutting off a head if you crop to 8x10. And I'm talking about vertical portraits here. So I really like that feature. And in fact, Nikon is the only camera company that offers that. The Nikon, it started, I believe, with the Nikon D3, and of course the D4, 5, and 6 had it, the D800, 810, and 850. And then when the Z7 came out, it was also available in the Z7 and the Z7 II. The Z9 does not have that. Because I'd be using the camera a lot for portraits, I wanted to have that capability. I got used to it. However, when the Z8 was announced, I started reading a lot about it, watching a lot of videos, and I saw something, and honestly, I don't know where. I kind of glossed over it, but it mentioned something about having a 5:4 grid overlay available. I think it was on the Z9. Now, even though I read a lot about the Z9 ever since its introduction, I never knew about the ability to select from different grids. So I probably would not have done my previous video on why I wouldn't buy a Z9 if I had known that. So it wasn't something, I read a lot of reviews on the Z9, and possibly I missed it, but I never saw that come up. And I think I would have noticed it because that's something that's important to me. Since the Z8 has mostly everything the Z9 has, with a few exceptions, maybe it has that as well. Many digital cameras have a grid overlay, and it does help with lighting things up. It's great for architectural photography. But this was the first time I had heard of a 5:4 grid. So I did a little more research, and actually I sent an email to Tom Hogan. Now, for those of you who don't know who Tom Hogan is, check out his website. Just search for Tom Hogan. He's got a ton of information on digital cameras. Primarily Nikon, but he talks about a lot. He's very knowledgeable. He's very honest. And it's usually accurate information from Tom. There's no baloney. So I sent him an email. Does the Nikon Z8 have a 5:4 image ratio overlay grid? I got a one-word answer from Tom, yes. So that pretty much made my mind up. I wanted a newer camera. I bought the Z6 A few months after it was introduced, about a year later, I picked up a Z7, and I've been happy with them, but they're not perfect. Of course, no camera is perfect, but the eye focus on the Z7 was okay. It didn't always hit the mark. Finding out that it had the availability of this 5:4 grid really sealed the deal for me, because all I have to do now is select that, and then when shooting portraits, keep my subjects within that grid. And if I do, I know that will scale right up to 8x10. When processing the images, I just crop them down to 8x10 size, and I'm sure that will work great. That's something I did years ago when I was shooting in medium format. I had an overlay that I placed right on the screen that showed me that 8x10 image ratio. Okay, and I kept my portrait subjects within that. So, of course, that's not the only reason why I decided to order a Z8. Big reason, of course, was the much improved autofocus over the Z7. The Z7 works good with eye control focus, but it misses sometimes. It's not great for action, birds in flight. Now, I don't do a lot of that, but when I do, I wanted a more responsive camera. I love the pre-release feature. If shooting 30 frames a second or greater, that's only available in JPEG, so that you put light pressure on the shutter release, and once you press that shutter release, it will have recorded 1 second before you actually fully depressed it. I hope I explained that right. So in other words, let's say there's a bird sitting on a branch. You're anticipating that bird flying. So you have light pressure on the shutter release, and if that bird takes off, you now fully press the shutter release. Well, you probably would not have pressed that shutter release all the way down as quickly as the bird took off. So what happens is it records up to 1 second before you fully pressed it. So you will then usually catch the bird taking off. Okay, so what else? I really like the fact that the rear LCD can be tilted in a vertical position. So in other words, with the Z7 and Z6, for example, you do have that tilting LCD, and that works great for low angle shots, but only horizontal. With the Z9 and the Z8, it will tilt so that you can shoot a vertical low angle shot. And I really like that. I really like the fact that the buttons light up. I like the fact that there's no blackout in the viewfinder. I mean, there's so many improvements over the other Z cameras. And of course, it has most of the features of the Z9 in a smaller, lighter, less expensive package. Now, another thing, I have done a few videos asking for an APS-C equivalent, a Z equivalent, to the Nikon D500, which I own. The D500 is a great camera for action and sports and those kinds of things. And I got to thinking that this Z8 really gives you a much improved mirrorless version of the D500. So how is that? Well, it has a 45 megapixel sensor. If you set it for DX mode, it goes down to a 19 megapixel sensor with the DX crop. The D500, of course, is a APS-C DX sensor camera that shoots at up to 10 frames a second, and it's 20 megapixel. So you are getting almost the equivalent megapixels shooting the Z8 in the DX mode. Now, of course, if Nikon did come out with a Z equivalent to the D500, of course, it would be less expensive than $400. But I know I wouldn't buy one now because the Z8 will most likely be able to do what a potential Z equivalent of the D500 can do. So it is a very versatile camera. It's a great portrait camera. They put some things in. The big thing that was important to me was that 5:4 grid to make it a great portrait camera with the great eye focus. It's a great landscape camera. High megapixel, a low ISO of 64, which gives you great dynamic range. The tilting rear LCD, both for horizontal and vertical shots. The great autofocus, great for sports and wildlife. 20 frames per second RAW, 30 frames per second JPEG. There's even a 60 frames per second mode in reduced resolution. I believe that would be in DX resolution. And there's also an 11 megapixel, 120 frame per second speed available. There's also great video capabilities. Now, I am way more into still photography than video, but it's nice to know those capabilities are there. It also takes a proper grip. I've seen the grip. I've seen some videos on the grip. It doesn't look very nice. And actually, with the grip attached, the Z8 becomes taller than the Z9. I don't know that I would pick up the grip, but it's nice to know it's there if I need it. Probably the main reason to buy the grip would be for the additional battery, so that you could run the camera off of 2 batteries, which would probably give you the same number of shots that you would get with the Z9. And one of the batteries is hot swappable. So let's say you have the camera up on a tripod, you're shooting some video, and you could easily swap out one battery for the other without turning the camera off. The camera is supposed to start shipping on May 25th, so hopefully I will receive mine soon. And when I do, I will check it out completely and do a video on my impressions of actually shooting with the Nikon Z8. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And please, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I will respond to all questions. Okay, so please subscribe to my channel. Give it a thumbs up and tap that bell so you'll be alerted anytime I come out with a new video. And I usually come out with a new video at 11 a.m. every Wednesday, Eastern Time. So thanks, and I will talk to you next time.